Hi to Brit Lit, session 19 with Thelma English. I'm Thelma English. Good to see you again. I hope you enjoyed your week reading Milton, continuing in his Paradise Lost. I just going through my notes this week to update the Milton quizzing at the end. I had a lot of fun going through my text again and remembering all the fun things that were there, all the amazing things that are there. In 5 or 6 weeks, you really can't give John Milton justice for what we would love to learn about him. Let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the privilege to educate at home in Oregon and in most of the other states in America. I pray that you would bless these families who have chosen to do the harder, better thing in Jesus' name. Amen. Imitation of Christ. Last week, you got a volunteer to read. If you're sitting by yourself or listening online or something like that, then grab a copy. We're in class. We usually use this Dover Thrift Edition, which has selections from the Imitation of Christ, but we'll have your volunteer read now. All right, we'll get started again. Most of today's class is all about writing your paper and then Milton quizzing. In our schedule review, you can see that we're continuing with Milton, but today we're talking about writing your paper, and then we'll be quizzing on the sections of Paradise Lost that you read last week. Your reading this week is another 50 pages from about 201 to about 250, basically from book 6, line 501 to about book 9, line 100. Your syllabus reading, if you're not tired of reading this yet, when I consider how my light is spent, there's a purpose for having you read this repeatedly. It is such an important poem, and it's an important one for us to remember that John Milton wrote this poem as he is talking about his blindness. This beautiful poem. Continue working on your Paradise Lost paper, which is due session 21. There are no handouts for this week, but you had lots of handouts the last few weeks, either handouts or perhaps they were sent to you as emails. Some of them are designed to be sent to you as emails. For example, if you're writing about Eve or about Satan or different themes in this book, I have papers and emails all ready to help you. I have even citations. You received a 12 book outline of Paradise Lost with lots of events with citations, so that if you're looking to find something again because you want to mention it in your writing, you can go through that outline, that 12 book outline, and find the section you were talking about. And the book numbers and the line numbers are all there for you. I've also given you lots of character traits of Eve and Satan anyway, so that if you want to write about them, you have some good quotes already there for you. And you can see how those things get cited with the book number dot and then the line number after it. And you're welcome to use a citation in your paper that just says PL, then the book number and line numbers, as I do on our schedule reviews. Excuse me. Your paper was assigned back on session 16 to a character study of one character or a theme study of Paradise Lost. Your teacher or parent may have a specific one in mind for you to write. If you've written a theme study previously, maybe you want to do a character study. If you've written a character study, then perhaps you want to try a theme study. The theme study is a more difficult paper to write. You're identifying the purpose of John Milton's book, Paradise Lost, and the theme study is more appropriate for an older age, unless you feel like you're ready for it. Grades 11 and 12, 800-word minimum. That is a perfect 800-word paper minimum to get an A. Any less than that, and you can't get an A, that's a minimum, not a maximum. Grades 9 and 10, 650-word minimum, and grades 7 and 8, If you are attempting this challenging class in grade 7 and 8, 500 words is going to do it. And so grades 7 and 8 need at least 2 quotes, grades 9 and 10 need at least 3 quotes, and grades 11 and 12 need at least 4 quotes, and they all need to have citations. And feel free to use the citation you see in the schedule review at the top that says PL, and then it says, actually it's missing a space. There should be one space between the PL and the number 6 up there. You can see. Sorry about that. But your paper, you've got to get serious about your paper now. All right, one note, if you are going through the Thelma Read Aloud, and I hope you all are, I accidentally skip. In my Norton Critical Edition, it's page 164 and 165, but mine is an older edition, so the page numbers may have changed. But on those 2 pages is book 7, line 36, through book 7, line 115. So those lines 36 to 115, are not in the Thelma Read Aloud. And if you have my edition where those are facing pages of 164 and 165, you can see how easy that was that I missed it. I turned 2 pages at once, and I apologize for that. Don't skip reading just because I did. I did not skip for any purpose. All right, writing your paper. The most important thing about writing your paper is you have to choose a topic. Are you writing a theme study? Are you writing a character? If you're writing a character study, you need to choose your character and think about them for the rest of the reading of Paradise Lost. And hopefully, if you had a character in mind earlier, you made some notes in your book, maybe some pencil notes in your margin. I always recommend opening your book and using a pencil on the very edge of the margin and just draw a line or something on the edge of the margin so that as you flip through the pages, it will stand out to you again. You can find it. You could do the same thing with sticky notes. You could take a sticky note and cut it up into little strips and then stick one of those on every page where you think there might be something that you will use for your paper. So you choose your topic. You choose then the essay style. Are you going to compare? For example, are you going to compare? You could write a paper that is not a theme study or a character study. It could be kind of a character study comparing the good angels to the bad angels, for example, or contrasting the good angels with the bad angels. You could analyze a character, analyze Abdiel, or analyze Satan, analyze a character. You could classify between the good angels and the bad angels and explain a little bit about them. You could pick a different essay style if you can get approval for that. But regardless of what kind of paper you write, you need to organize your ideas. And how do you organize your ideas? Way back in the olden days, when I was teaching my boys at home, we bought a book by Frody Jensen, and it was called Format Writing. The edition we had was his first edition. It didn't even have page numbers. And that was frustrating. We wrote in our own page numbers. Now it's much fancier, and it may not even look like this blue. Mine was not blue. But Frody Jensen, I have never seen anything that was so inexpensive, so precise and concise. And so I've never seen anything that compared quite with that. I know other homeschool moms who have taken complete writing courses and programs, and I'm sure they're awesome. For those of you who are going to be writers, but Frody Jensen works really good, and I have made a condensed information. I've taken what he taught us and then condensed it even more to just talk about it with you. So these are notes that are summarized from his format writing program, but it would be his first edition, the one that didn't even have page numbers on it. I'm sure he's changed it around since then. But this is the way that I taught my boys. And actually, I taught a couple of college students too who did not know how to write. Taught them how to write a 5-paragraph essay too. 5-paragraph essay might even satisfy your 800-word requirement. If it does not, turn it into a 7-paragraph essay, something like that. If you're trying to compare characters or themes, you want, for a 5-paragraph essay, you want to write 3 comparisons of the differences between 2 items. So you could compare their likenesses, compare their differences, and then summarize the information. And so You could compare the fallen angels to the good angels, compare their allegiance and their loyalty, compare their natures, compare their intents, compare the way that Milton treats them in his Paradise Lost. If you're making an analogy, you might list 3 sets of similarities between angels and, for example, soldiers. You could do an analogy between angels and soldiers, and or 3 sets of similarities of Milton's epic and the political situation in London with the loss of paradise, that life without a monarch. If you prefer to write politically, you could feel that'll require a little bit of research, but it wouldn't be too hard. Use great vocabulary words like the interregnum and the restoration. The interregnum, you know, is that period from 1649 to 1660. Yes, and the period immediately after that, when Charles I was beheaded, and then they had the interregnum, and that was 11 years. In 1660, the son of Charles I, Charles II, comes back and is reigning on the throne, and that's called the Restoration period. It's the restoration of the monarchy, and you could write about that. You could make an analogy with an angel and a good soldier, something historical or something modern. If you are into war stories or something like that, you could make this analogy of a good soldier. How good of soldiers were they? How brave were they? Did they follow all the rules? You could make an analogy by writing a soldier's manual for an angel. I had a student do this once, and it was a great paper, writing a soldier's manual for an angel. And you could even use a real Army or a Marine manual. I'm sure you can find one online. And then you could rewrite that, cite it as a resource, and you could rewrite that for an angel. That would be a cool paper to write. I've seen all of these. I didn't come up with all these ideas. I've had students who came up with all of these ideas. If you are trying to classify Milton's theology, angels or the devils, you want to identify 3 major categories of the subject for your 5-paragraph essay. Your first paragraph is your introductory paragraph, and then you have your 3 major categories of your subject, and then the 5th paragraph is a summation of all of that. And in your first paragraph, you'll define them in a thesis statement. You'll identify those 3 categories and define them in your thesis statement. You tell me what you're going to write about, then you write about it, and then at the end, in the final paragraph, you tell me what you wrote about. In a classification essay, you separate things or ideas into specific categories and you discuss each of them. You organize the essay by defining each classification and by giving examples of each type. You define and describe, you define and describe, you define and you describe, and you summarize it. You classify, for example, the categories of angels. You could give details of each type of angel using the angelology audio and your recent angel handout, and then a good Bible dictionary. Just look up angels, or you could go through your concordance in your Bible and just look up angel and see where they are mentioned and what they are like, and that would help you to establish your classifications, or it would help you for descriptive words to use for your angels, to compare them with angels found in the Bible. Are they similar? Are they different? Then you organize your ideas into a diagram. And here, let's see, excuse me. So when we organize our ideas with a diagram, the idea is to put our ideas about the topic on paper in a moderately organized format. Some of you have lots of experience organizing your writing, and some of you don't. The older you are, the more organized I expect your writing to be. The younger you are, especially if you are grades 7 and 8, trying to do Paradise Lost, even listening to the Thelma audio, I will expect less from your paper writing. The structure you create here can still change before the essay is complete. So don't worry about your initial organizing of your ideas. The purpose is to get them down onto paper or onto a whiteboard. We often would use a whiteboard, but this exercise provides most of the material for your writing, just your brainstorming. For example, what if my topic was themes in Milton's Paradise Lost. What if that was my, let's see, what if that was my idea, was to look at several themes in Paradise Lost. So the big circle in the middle, that's what I'm going to use. That's what I'm going to, I draw that on the whiteboard or on a piece of paper. That's what I want to write about, themes in Milton's Paradise Lost. So then I look at all the handouts Mrs. E gave me, and I think about everything that I read about Milton and the outline. I look at and everything that Mrs. E has said about Milton's Paradise Lost, and I think, okay, I think pride is a main theme in Milton's Paradise Lost. Definitely, pride is a main. Free will. Yes, it's all about free will. Adam and Eve have free will. They have free will to sin, and they do. And then disobedience, the cost of disobedience, for example, or the price of disobedience, how horrible that is. And so those are my three main things I'm going to talk about. And now I'm going to research each of those. So I look at pride and I think, well, yes, pride, what motivates Lucifer as a character in our book? What motivates him? Definitely it is pride. Pride motivates Lucifer. Pride is Satan's, it is his downfall. Definitely pride is his downfall. Pride is also Adam and Eve's downfall, isn't it? And then I'll give some Paradise Lost quotes to support that about his pride. And I've given you tons of information to help make writing this paper more easy. I do have, pride coming before if you can look up Bible verses too and quote them. For example, Proverbs 11:2, you could quote that one. And Satan, the big thing about Satan, I don't know if I have it on this screen, is that he sinned without anybody tempting him. When Satan sinned, he just wanted to sin. It was pride or willful disobedience, whatever you want to talk about. And he did have free will, and his pride led him to willfully obey. He was not tempted. Eve was tempted. And so that makes a difference. Satan also was jealous. He was jealous of the sun, remember? And there's another verse up on the screen, Proverbs 29:23. All you have to do is look in your concordance about pride, and you'll come up with some great Bible verses to use as a quote, or to use if you have a grand Bible verse that you think makes a summation of everything you want to say, then you could use that as a final ending. After you close your conclusion on your paper, then you could skip down 1 inch and print that Bible verse. It's a little bit of an afterthought or a summation of your entire thoughts on the subject. Satan definitely wants to be the leader. Way back in book 1, line 263, he talks about he wants to be the leader. Satan also provides all the conflict for this book. There would be no conflict if there was not pride and sin. But you do need quotes to support all of this. And pride, think about it, is the opposite of humility. What God wants is humility. He wants Adam and Eve to come to him after the fall, and he wants them to repent and be humble. And humility appears to be impossible for Satan. He has such a big dose of pride that he cannot be humble. And there are more Bible verses up on the screen there. If the video you think goes by too quick, you can do what I do at church, and you lift up your phone camera and you take a screenshot, a picture of the slide, of the PowerPoint slide. Or if you're watching this on your phone, take a screenshot of that slide, and then you have that information. And let's see what else on Satan. He does claim to be self-begot. That would be the epitome of pride, wouldn't it? He claims to be self-begot. That's back in book 5, line 860, when he claimed, I'm just looking in the back of my book where I've written little notes, but you have all of these in the handouts you've received recently. If you don't have the handouts and all of the things that go along with this class, then you must have stumbled onto this on YouTube accidentally. We are on session 19 out of 32 sessions in an advanced placement high school class, Christian in Nature, and we choose harder works like Paradise Lost. But to get these materials, you will need to go to www.thelmaslibrary.com, And then the passwords are all there and the usernames. Type those in and then go to session 19. And I believe all the handouts are there. Well, there aren't any in session 19. Session 16, 17, 18 have lots of handouts and you can print those from there. But to get the syllabus, to get any teacher items like the quizzes with the quiz answers and exams and things like that, then an adult will have to contact me and ask me for those things, and I will gladly help out so you can run your own class. But if you're doing this on your own, you're kind of at a disadvantage that you don't have all of these handouts and things. Lucifer's fall from heaven, where is that in the Bible? That's really kind of tricky. People always ask me, where is that in the Bible? What do we have? Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, book 14, chapter 14, verses 12 to 15 talk about Lucifer's fall, and Revelation 12, verses 4 to 9 also discuss this. And let's see if there's anything else. Oh, there's so many things about the archangels. If you get into angelology, let's see, sin, when you mention sin, the downfall of Adam and Eve, one of my favorite quotes is in book 9, line 780, when Milton says, earth felt the wound. When Eve plucks the fruit, earth felt the wound. Great, great quote. Really cool quote. All right, so pride, lots of information about pride in Milton's book. Then what about free will? If you want to talk about free will, we're going to need a little bit of theological help so that you can be theological correct. In my Bible classes, I always tell my students that we are all one step away from being heretics, which I believe to be pretty true. We all like to make our Bibles say what we wish they said rather than what they really said. My master's studies are in exegetical theology here at Western Seminary in Portland, and I like to call that how not to be a heretic, exegetical theology. So we learned the Hebrew and we learned the Greek, which I've retained fairly well, I suppose. And Hebrew's really hard, Greek's really easy. Greek is easier than Spanish. I would like to remind kids, Greek is easier than Spanish. College level Greek is easier than Spanish. Spanish, you might have to learn a couple thousand words in a year, and Greek, you're only going to learn the words that are in the New Testament. You might learn 200 words your first year. And there are really only a handful of letters that are very different from the English. And so it's very easy to learn those. And we have lots of cognitives, lots of words in the English that come right over from the Greek. And so a lot of the words that you learn your first few weeks, words like cosmos, it means the world, and chronos means time, things like that, that are very easy to learn. But if you want to learn about free will, I have listed up here eSword Bible. The eSword Bible software used to be free. I believe that it still is. There's lots of free Bible software. You just need to make sure that you're not getting it from some type of occult place. Make sure that it is mainstream Bible software, and then look up free will or a Bible dictionary. Look up a Bible dictionary and look up free will in a Bible dictionary. So let's see, eSword commentary. If you do download the eSword free software, then you can start downloading commentaries and you can download free Bible dictionaries. They are all outdated. To get current dictionaries, you need to pay money to download those. So to get free ones, pick all the free ones and then look at those Bible dictionaries and look up free will and see, and then be sure and quote them and cite them properly if you use those words directly. But those Bible dictionaries and Bible commentaries, there are so many of them, dozens of them, that are free. And this is something where you can also talk with your parents or a pastor to get just ask a pastor for high school level information on free will, and they might make you a photocopy of a couple of pages out of one of their books or even invite you to borrow a book. Then Blue Letter Bible, which is online, is a great place to get more current Bible commentaries on the sections of scripture that you might look up. If, for example, if you were looking up Isaiah 14, 12 to 5, or Revelation 12, 4 to 9, you could look up commentary on the Blue Letter Bible. The only problem with Blue Letter Bible is that those resources can only be accessed online. You can't download it and carry it around with you on your phone or on your iPad. You must look at it while you have an internet connection and look at it online. But lots of great information looking up in a Bible dictionary about free will. Choosing to rebel. You remember that that's one thing you might mention, is that Adam and Eve were tempted and then chose to rebel against God, whereas Satan rebelled of his own free will. It was his idea. No one tempted Satan. That's good to remember. Choosing to eat. Uh, uh, if you do a topic of free will without Lucifer, say you are talking about Adam or comparing Adam and Lucifer and Adam and Eve, well, Adam and Eve did choose to eat, and then use Paradise Lost quotes to support. Here we have book 9, line 348. You should always have your book with you. Book 9, line 348. Mine is getting dog-eared at this point. Line 348. Let's see. This is Adam, and he starts talking at 343. Oh woman, he's talking to Eve. Best are all things as the will of God ordained them. He's getting a little exasperated here. His creating hand, nothing imperfect or deficient left of all that he created, much less man, or aught anything that might his happy state secure from outward force. Within himself the danger lies, yet lies within his power. The danger is inside us. The danger is not out in the garden, it's inside us. Against his will, he can receive no harm. But God left free the will. And if you're writing about free will, this is your line. But God left free the will. For what obeys reason is free, and reason he made right, but bid her well beware and still erect, lest by some appearing good surprised, she dictate false and misinform the will to do what God expressly hath forbid. So he's telling Eve here, it's not that I don't trust you, but we are created with a free will, and we could choose to disobey. We could. For what obeys reason is free, but lest some fair appearing good surprised, she dictate false. So unless something appears to be good, but it's really bad, and then he's talking about, I don't mistrust you, I just love you. We could be tricked. And so he says, lines 361 in book 9, just a few lines down, we could, by the foe suborned or induced, and fall into deception unaware. This is a great book. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I always enjoy it. All right, what about disobedience? Well, disobedience is sin. You know that. Disobedience is as the sin of witchcraft. It's really bad. God really doesn't like disobedience. And that's why I think that's why we are, as humans, we are brought up by human parents, and it really doesn't matter whether they're blood parents or your grandma or adoptive parents, but we're brought up by the people that God chose to bring us up so that we can learn obedience. And because that's the most important thing we learn as adults, is to be obedient to God. So by practicing being obedient to our parents, even if we think they're wrong, and sometimes they are wrong, but then we need to disobey God, even if we think he's wrong and we don't agree. If the Bible says that's what it is, we have to agree with God, even if our own brain or heart are telling us something different. Whatever God's word said, that is true. That's real. Sin separates us from God. And that's the point about disobedience too. As soon as Eve or Adam disobeys, as soon as Satan disobeyed, then he was separated from God. He is not on the path that leads to God. And that's really important about disobedience. And then use Paradise Lost quotes to support. And I'm looking to see if I've sent you any specific quotes from Paradise Lost about disobedience. And that must be another. That is another slide. All right, what about Bible verses on pride? Here are a bunch of them. Bible verses on pride. And I've given you just a little bit of the verse so that if you're familiar with the Bible, you can see which ones these are, but you might want to write these down or take a screenshot. A man's pride will bring him low, and that would be the true for Satan also. But even Adam and Eve hiding from God, that was a pride. They did not want to humble themselves and say, "Oh Lord, forgive us. We have sinned." They didn't want to do that. They wanted to hide. They wanted to hide themselves from God. Mark even 7:22. Pride proceeds from within and defiles a man. Uh, Romans 1:30. Insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil. This is what pride is all about. James 4:6. God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And so there are a lot of lessons even for us here in Milton's Paradise Lost. 1 Peter 5:5, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. 1 Corinthians 1:31, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord. And this is kind of cool because in the ancient world, now, of course, Paul wrote this letter to the Corinthians about 2,000 years ago. And he says, if you're going to boast, boast in the Lord, boast about God, what he's done in your life, what he can do for you, what he is doing now in the world, etc. And this is a big deal. About 1200 BC, we have the time period of the Iliad and the Odyssey. That would be the Trojan War, about 1200 BC. And the Iliad and the Odyssey were told as stories, probably got grander and bigger. That's another class, that's classical lit. But by the time we get down to about maybe 800 BC, maybe as late as 600 BC, they are written down as stories and they've been aggrandized and made bigger and better, I might say. But it's all about boasting in that prideful worldview, in the honor worldview. We mentioned that last week. In a worldview based on honor, pride is a big, big deal. And so to be publicly humiliated is a big, big deal. And Satan very much seems to have this honor code as his code for living, that he's been publicly humiliated, he's been brought down. And so he would never humble himself. We read that over and over in Paradise Lost. He would never humble himself. He's very arrogant. And Paul is telling the Corinthians, if you're going to boast about something, don't boast about being able don't boast about your pride and all of that. Boast about God. Boast about him. Don't boast about your strength and all of the things that the ancients would boast about. Galatians 6:14, that we should not boast except in the cross of our Lord. And it goes back to the same thing Paul is telling the Corinthians. He told the Galatians, which might have been his first letter. He says, just don't boast except that Jesus was crucified for us. Boast about that. Ephesians 2:9, that no one should boast. Romans 1:30, insolent, arrogant, boastful. These go in long lists of bad things we don't want to do. For 2 Timothy 3:2, probably the last book that Paul wrote, telling him about boastful, arrogant revilers, and really to have nothing to do with those. And 1 John 2:16, the boastful pride of life is not from the Father. Amazing. That's just not from God. Preparing your thesis statement. A lot of stuff on pride there. The thesis statement tells the reader what the essay is going to be about and what point you, the author, will be making. You know what the essay will be about. That was your topic. Now you must look at your outline or your diagram and decide what point you're going to be making. What do the main ideas and the supporting ideas that you listed say about your topic? So your thesis statement is going to have two parts. It has the first part that states the topic. For example, in my sample paper, I write, the themes of Milton's Paradise Lost are those of blank, blank, and blank. I'm going to pick three. But in the second part, the blank, blank, and blank states the point of the essay, what you're going to explain or convince. The themes of Milton's Paradise Lost are those of pride, free will, and disobedience. That's my thesis statement. The themes of Milton's Paradise Lost are those of pride, free will, and disobedience. And you've got lots of good writing material if you just choose that. And I'm okay if you copy my idea and choose that. But I think you probably have ideas of your own by now. And so that's how we come up with our thesis statement. The themes of Milton's Paradise Lost are those of pride, free will, and disobedience. The thesis statement should be included in your first paragraph. It is usually the last sentence in the first paragraph. Sometimes you open with that. that generally it's the last sentence in your first paragraph, and then down in paragraph 5. So the first paragraph is you tell me what you're going to tell me, and that includes this thesis statement. And then you have 3 paragraphs, 1 paragraph to describe pride in Paradise Lost, and that gives you lots, because you didn't even choose just Satan or just Adam or Eve. By just choosing pride, you can talk about Satan's pride, about Adam's pride, about Eve's pride, how they blame each other, that's pride. You can talk about all of those things. And then 1 paragraph about free will, how Adam and Eve had free will, but at least they were tempted, and Satan had free will. Lucifer, Satan, had free will, but he chose. No one tempted him. He chose to disobey. And that makes up an easy paragraph. And then you could have another paragraph about disobedience in Paradise Lost, and talk about Satan's disobedience and about Eve's disobedience and Adam's disobedience, everybody's disobedience that causes so much problem. You could talk about disobedience in general with Bible principles. And so, the first paragraph, you tell me what you're going to tell me. And then the second paragraph in this sample would be about pride in Paradise Lost. The third paragraph would be about free will in Paradise Lost. The fourth paragraph would be about disobedience in Paradise Lost. And the fifth paragraph would be a summation, summing it all up, kind of restating the thesis statement, but in different words in the last. So these 3 themes are perfect for a 5-paragraph essay if you don't have your ideas already prepared, if you need help with your ideas. So the first part, let's say a thesis statement, let's say you're going to write a character study and you still need a thesis statement. The first part states the topic. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, the angel Abdiel is shown to be, so you've chosen Abdiel to write a character study on. And Abdiel, and since it's a 5-paragraph essay, if you have 3 things to say about Abdiel, that makes the paper easier to write if you just have 3 things. That's paragraph 2, 3, 4. In introduction is paragraph 1, paragraph 2, 3, 4 are on his faithfulness, truthfulness, and leadership abilities. And then paragraph 5 is to sum it up. So the second part states the point of the essay. So in John Milton's Paradise Lost, the angel Abdiel is shown to be, and then I made up, a seraph of faithfulness, a symbol of truth, and a worthy leader. So I came up with my 3 things. The diagram for a character study will include key elements or attributes of your character. And so that's where you will look. We had Abdiel in at least 1 slide, and the recommended online source, can't remember what, Cummings Study Guides, had information on Abdiel, but you do need to make that into your own paper. If you quote anything directly from them, you need to be sure that you're using quotation marks and cite them. They are a good source. Excuse me. The topic you've chosen must now be explained, described, appealed, compared, or argued. Let's see. Hopefully my screen is working well. Each main idea that you wrote down in that diagram is going to become one of the body paragraphs. Your 3 main ideas will now become your 3 body paragraphs. Excuse me. Hopefully you're seeing everything correctly. I'm going to pause the video to cough again. Excuse me for all my coughing. Yes, I've gone to all kinds of doctors for it. They stick stuff down my throat and they do all types of things. CT scans, x-rays, things down my throat, all of that. Yes, we'll see. I don't think anybody can really help me with my voice or my coughing. The topic you've chosen must now be explained, explain it, describe it, appealed. You can either explain it that that's the way it had to be, or that's the way it shouldn't have been, compare these elements, or argue it, argue against it, argue for it. Each main idea that you wrote down in your diagram will become one of the body paragraphs. Your 3 main ideas will now become your 3 body paragraphs in a 5-paragraph essay. Each body paragraph is going to have the same basic structure. You start by writing down one of your main ideas in a sentence form. Next, you write down each of your supporting points for that main idea, but you leave 4 or 5 lines in between each point if you're doing this on paper. If you're doing this on paper, let's see, then you write them on paper. We always did this on a whiteboard. In the space under each point, write down some elaboration for that point. Elaboration can be further description or explanation or discussion. You may have learned how to do this using file cards. I know that my granddaughters learned this using file cards. And then you wrote a supporting position. You wrote down a main idea, and then you wrote down information on that main idea, quotes, page numbers, resources. You wrote things under that point so that all of that, everything on that file card, or in my idea on the whiteboard, everything under that circle idea then becomes the paragraph, helps you write the paragraph. If you're able, you include a summary sentence for each paragraph, and that summary sentence kind of leads into the next paragraph. Once you've fleshed out each of your body paragraphs, one for each main point, you're ready to continue. Then you insert appropriate quotations from Paradise Lost and other sources. So we've learned how to insert poetry. We have learned how to insert block quotes and then cite all your quotes properly. I don't even count quotes as quotes if they are not cited properly, because sometimes people just look on the internet, Milton quote about obedience or something, and they find something that may not even be from John Milton. And if it is from Milton, it might not be from Paradise Lost, and it may not even tell where it's from. So unless you can cite that quote and know that it's a true citation, don't use the quote, but do cite everything properly. The conclusion brings closure to the reader. It sums up all your points and it gives a final perspective on your topic. All the conclusion needs is 3 or 4 strong sentences, which don't have to follow any particular formula. Just review the main points, being careful not to restate them exactly in the same way, or briefly describe your opinions about the topic. Add the finishing touches. Now you've completed all the paragraphs. Before you can consider it a finished product, however, you have to give some thought to the formatting of your paper. So check the instructions for this assignment. Make sure that you are meeting the word count, that you have the correct number of quotes or more, and anything else that your teacher, parent, or facilitator has required of you. Maybe they've even given you a written list of requirements. I don't do that. I let people use the schedule for that. If you're doing anything unusual, you should get your parent, teacher, or facilitator to approve or sign off on that first. That happens with me when someone wants to write a more unusual paper. Then I have them ask me first and get instructions for that. Okay, have you written, this is in your syllabus, but I don't have the page number. Have you written a paper before you're done that satisfies my requirements? This is your checklist, or your teacher, or your writing teacher, or your parent. Does your writing shift tenses from past to present or future? Did you check for contractions? We don't use any contractions. If you end up with an easy peasy writing teacher in college or seminary or higher education anywhere, and they don't care about contractions, feel free to use them. But it is much better to start out strict and just say we're not using contractions. It is better to not use contractions. It is a higher form of English. Now, when you're writing, sometimes we write in past tense. Milton lived to be, all of those are past tense when you add the ed, or Milton was a good man, or Milton was a great man. Milton moved from here to there. And that would be a past tense. Now, sometimes people use a present tense. Milton is popular for modern readers. Milton, that would be present tense, but the historical present is my favorite. You can say Milton now moves from this home to that home. Milton now marries his second wife, and that would be historical present. Give your paper to somebody to proof it, to make sure that you have fulfilled everything. Did you add quotes? Did you give your paper a title? For grades 11 and 12, all of your papers should have titles now. Have you prepared a cover sheet? with your name, your grade, your paper title, and the course title. Think of when you get to college, everything will have to have a course title because a teacher might teach more than one course, and they need to have the course title, their name, the teacher's name, and they need to have your name and your grade and the title of the paper. All of these things need to be on the cover sheet. Did you double space your lines? Very often kids forget how to do that. Don't just go to the end of the line and hit enter to bump it down, because then every time you remove or add something to a sentence, all of those are going to get odd on you. Use use your word for all that it can do. It's easy for it to select all and then to change the won't change the line spacing, not 1.5, but to double space. And this gives your teacher or me or your parent or teacher facilitator, this gives them room to make some suggestions or make comments right next to the word that needs a comment, rather than trying to write in the margins and draw circles and point and things like that. There's a reason for double space. Do it whether you don't like it or not. Give your teacher your grade, because your teacher might be like me, where you have a different grade requirement for grade 7, 8, grades 9 and 10, and grades 11 and 12. Or if a TA is going over your paper first, they need to know what grade you are in to know, did you write the correct word count? Did you fulfill the number of quotes? That type of thing. We do subtract quoted material. If you just have a couple of short quotes, it's not that big a deal, but you do have to subtract quoted material, anything that's above 4 or 5 words at a time here or there. You subtract that word count, or else you end up turning in a paper that's all quotations from, and that you don't have any of your own words. All you have to do in your Word is highlight the words, and it will tell you at the bottom in little letters, it'll tell you how many words you've highlighted. So what I do is I highlight the entire paper and get the total word count, write that down, then highlight each quote. Okay, this quote is 24 words, this quote is 15 words, this quote is 30 words or 5 words. Add those all up and subtract those from the total and give that as your word count. It's really important. Believe me, your parent or teacher does not want to count the words in your paper to see if you fulfilled the 800 word requirement. You must do it yourself. I usually take off half of 1 letter grade for not giving the word count. That means 5 points out of 100. So if you have 100% paper, you're going to get 95. If you have 95, you're going to get 90. If you're barely hovering there with 74%, you're going to get 69 and get a D. So do give your word count. It's very important. And every single quote has to have a citation, where it doesn't matter where you're quoting from. All right, moving on to Milton quizzing. And this is where you have the opportunity. You can go to Thelma's library, and in session 19, your teacher can, I don't think the Milton quizzing is there because the answers are there. So your teacher got that from me, and she may have that printed all up, and then do your own quizzing, where you turn off this video and you use the whiteboard. You write the citation on the whiteboard, and the teacher or a TA, a teacher assistant, reads the question, and then you, with your book open, you can open it up to book 6, line 500 right now, so that you're ready for the first question, and then you can close this video and just do it at home for fun. Otherwise, you can listen to me. I will wait, it's about 8 seconds in between, so that you can listen to me say it. You can pause the video, look it up, and then give whatever answer you want, and then hear me give the answer afterwards. And if you are doing this alone on your own on the iPhone, you can stop it easily, stop, go, stop, go. I suggest not giving yourself more than, let's see, the quizzing goes from slides 23 to 149. And so that's, wow, quizzing to 149. So that is 120 slides of quizzing. That's 60 questions. So divide the time up. That's about 60 questions. If you took a minute a question, that would take an hour. And so it's up to your teacher to allow as much time as you like. But we're going to get started right now. Book 6. Are you there? Book 6. This is a general question. Who tells Adam the story about the battle in heaven? And this is in book 6. see the art, if you can read this in the argument, the angel Raphael tells Adam the story, which is really cool. Define vicissitude. It means altering an alternating succession of contrasting things, a welcome change. You go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Define in prosect. It means prepared. In context, it says war he perceived, war in prosect. It means he prepared for war. He saw war he perceived, and so war he prepared for. It's a cool word. Define batalus. Warlike. Think of battle, having to do with battle, batalus. Define intestine war in heaven. What does that mean? Intestine war in heaven. It means a civil war. Think about intestinal is internal, an internal war. In heaven, intestine war, it's a civil war, right in the margin. Define parle in context. To parle means to speak. You'll hear in pirate movies, they parley with one another. They addressed one another, they spoke. What does Satan bleed? A nectarous humor sanguine. There are 4 humors, and he breeds nectar. That was what the Iliad and Odyssey thought the gods and goddesses bled, was nectar kind of thing. What does Satan propose to give them the advantage? Yes, Satan proposes that they build a cannon. Mark this in the margin. This is the funniest thing about Paradise Lost. They're going to build a cannon. That'll do it. What does each angel wish? They each wish that the cannon had been their own idea. It's such a great idea. And this is where Paradise Lost gets quite funny, doesn't it? Define matin. Yes, it means morning. And you're going to see this, I think it's in Shakespeare, probably in Chaucer. We'll see it in all types of poetry. So just learn these words, morning. Define serried. Pressed together or compacted together, serried. How do the angels counter the cannons? By plucking the hills and the mountains from their places and throwing them at the rebel angels and their cannons. Who does the 3rd day of fighting belong to? The Son of God, of course. Who is the only one who can end the war? The Son of God. What happens under the chariot? The foundations of heaven, except the throne of God, shake. Pretty cool. What does the Son of God's assault do to the rebel angels? All their strength is drained and they just fall down. What is said about the Son of God's strength? He put forth not even half his strength. What does the Son of God do with the rebel angels? He drives them before him until they throw themselves out of heaven and down into hell. All right, book 7. I hope you're having fun with this. What does Adam want to know now? How, when, and for what was earth created? So he wants to know, what was earth created for? How was it created? When was it created? Did I? Yeah. Go backwards accidentally. What was the name of Satan before his fall? Lucifer. Why does God create a new race? To replace the rebel angels. Eventually, through obedience, heaven and earth will be joined. And I like to just mention to you here, there were a lot of early church fathers that believed that's why that's why mankind was created, to replace those rebel angels. But it's just something from the early church fathers. There's nothing biblical. Define equipage in context. It's a carriage drawn by horses and attended by servants. What is the Son proclaiming here in these lines? The breadth of the world. The Son is creating the world. If you look in book 7 at line 232, you see that's the Son creating the world. It's pretty cool. What is the first thing God creates? Light, just like in Genesis. Define quintessence. Quintessence is the fifth element of which heavenly things are made. Remember that the 4 elements are earth, wind, water, and fire. And the fifth element, different writers made the fifth element different things, and Milton makes it quintessence. And that's what heavenly things are made out of. It's pretty cool. What does God do on the second day? He divides the waters from the waters, creating the firmament and the oceans, just like in Genesis. What is created next? Dry land and mountains. Some of you are not familiar with Genesis. Some of you know all of these without even checking Milton. What does God call the collected waters? Seas. What does he create on the earth in these lines? Grass and all plant life. Define verdure. Verdure is greenness. It means fresh vegetation, fresh things that are green, flourishing condition if it's used metaphorically, vigorous things because they're green. And I like to point out that verde is the Spanish word for green. For example, if you go to Taco Bell, verde sauce is green taco sauce. So verdure means green, and then by implication, metaphorically, fresh. What does God create on the fourth day? The sun, the moon, and the stars. Where does the moon get her light? By reflecting the light of the sun. And of course, we're not looking at Genesis for answers. We're looking in Milton at Milton's Paradise Lost. What is created on the fifth day? Whales, fish, seals, dolphins, leviathan, and all birds. Define callow. Callow means without feathers, unfledged. A little bird that doesn't have feathers yet is called unfledged. And metaphorically, it can be used to just say inexperienced. To be callow is to be unready to fly, unfledged, inexperienced. Learn the word. Define iris. Iris is a bird's nest. It's from a Latin word, iria, and I did not take Latin. I did Hebrew and Greek, and in high school I did French, but I didn't take Latin. So I may slaughter that word, iria, which means open field. So by implication, it's a bird of prey that nests up high. I think in this line it mentions high up in a cedar. It's a bird's nest, iris. And you need to remember that. Define pennon. It's used here metaphorically, so explain the metaphor. Yes, it's a banner, a flag. We say today a pennant. So here the pennons are the wings of the bird. What does God create on the sixth and last day? Every land creature. What is the master work mentioned here? A creature that was not a brute, but had reasoning powers and might govern the rest of the creatures, one who might worship and commune with God. So the masterwork is a person. How does God form Adam? Yes, it's a cool description. Out of the dust of the ground, he created him from the dust of the ground and breathed into him life, made in God's own image. And I wanted to point out to you the Hebrew word for Adam means dirt because we are made from the dirt. The word for man is ish, and then the word for woman is isha because she comes from man. Cool Hebrew words. What is the penalty for eating the forbidden fruit? Yes, it's death. As an answer, you don't have to have all of these, just death. But Milton knows it's biological death, it's psychological death because of all the guilt and shame, it's a social death because they're at odds with one another, blaming one another, and it's a spiritual death. They're now alienated from God, and what was once love becomes fear. It's really all earth felt the, I have that quote in the back of my book, all earth felt, I've gotten sidetracked here. Book 9, line 780, earth felt the wound. What is the seventh day? A day of rest. You know that, even if you didn't read the book. Okay, going into book 8. What does Adam question Raphael about? Yes, why it is that all the stars and cosmic bodies orbit around the earth only to serve the earth while the earth stands still. And remember, he didn't quite understand everything about astronomy yet, even if he did go visit Galileo. Why does Eve leave? She liked hearing things from Adam more than from the angel. And I have to apologize if any of the girls are offended. It offends me a little bit too. If there was an angel talking, I would certainly stay there, sit there. So I'm sorry, Milton. This is his view. We're not talking about the Bible. Define conspicuous. Transparent. So pay attention to that one. So in case you see that again. What does Raphael say about Adam's pondering? That he should leave that kind of thoughts to God. Yeah, his thoughts are higher than us. And Raphael says, you just got it. Some things you have to just give up on. What is the prime wisdom? To know the things of daily life. That's all Eve needs to be concerned about, is just prime wisdom, how to survive day by day. Why does Raphael not know firsthand of Adam's creation? Because he was gone on an errand to Hell's Gates. He tells Adam, I wasn't there when you were created. I was on a mission. He was out chasing bad angels, wasn't he? And he missed that. Define propitious in book 8, line 380, or define propitiate. This is Adam talking to God, and he says, my maker, be propitious while I speak. So be favorably inclined to hear me speak. To propitiate is to ask God to look upon you with favor. Relate Adam's story, and this is a biggie because you have to have read the story and remember it well. So give some kind of extra credit for this one, someone who can tell Adam's story in this section. Okay, Adam says, He wakes up lying on the grass. He stares at the sky. He rises. He examines the land and animals around him. He then examines himself, although he doesn't know anything about himself. He speaks and he knows the names of everything. He asks creation if it knows where he's from and what made him, but receiving no answer, he lies down and sleeps. He dreams of an apparition that leads him throughout the garden. He wakes and finds that everything he dreamed of is real. And a lot of these things are borrowed ideas of, being in a dream and awaking, have somebody else lead you around. Uh, Really amazing how he's borrowed from all types of ancient writers here. He wakes and finds that everything he dreamed of is real. The dream guide appears and Adam vows to worship him. He says that he's the one Adam seeks, his and the garden's creator. He gives the garden to Adam to care for and enjoy, but he tells Adam that he cannot eat of the tree of knowledge. He commands Adam to name all the animals as they come to him, and Adam understands their natures, although he still feels that he lacks something. He asks God how he's going to be happy alone, and he implores him for an equal companion. Now, you don't have to say all of that to get the answer correct, but it has to be similar to that. It has to be something like that to get this one and get some extra credit, to remember what Adam said. Next question. What is God's counter to Adam's claim that he cannot be companions with meaner animals, with more common animals? God says that he's alone with none equal to him and only the animals and his creation. How does Adam counter that? Yes, he's quite clever. Adam says that God is perfect, though one, and therefore does not need a companion to even out his defects like a man does, nor does God need to propagate because he's infinite, which is really profound that Milton has Adam say this. God, being perfect, is not male or female. He doesn't need a companion to even out his defects like a man and a woman do for each other. Really beautifully done. What does Adam see God doing? He sees while asleep God opening his left side and taking out a rib. God heals the wound and forms the rib into a woman. And this is not heretical, but in Genesis 2:21, Adam was put into a deep sleep, and we don't have any information that he watched while he was in this deep sleep, that he dreamed or watched God make the woman. But Milton does this, and he's just taking this uh, artistic license. Define vehement. Yes, and memorize this: to vehement, strong, intense, emotional, strenuous, impassioned, ardent, or great energy. He was vehement. He's insisting on something. Who's has who has the choice to stand or fall? Misspelling there on slide 134. Who has the choice to stand or fall? Who has the choice to stand or fall? It is Adam's own choice. Just like with us, it is our own choice. We choose. Are we going to obey or disobey? Book 9. Milton changes his story here. It's no longer a tale of angel visits. And this is the beginning of book 9. You can see lines 5, 6, 5, and 6. It's not a tale about angel visits anymore. What does Milton's tale topic change to? Yes, it turns to a tale of tragedy. It's not just descriptions anymore. It's a tale of tragedy. Define maugre. Maugre means in spite of or notwithstanding. And so you need to memorize this because it'll be all over other literature. Define, describe. To describe is to see or to observe something. He described, he saw something. Why does Satan return at midnight? Oh, I don't have the question. I just have the answer. So apologies for that. Because Uriel, the regent of the sun, told the angels of his entrance the first time and to guard against him. So he comes in the dark. How does Satan enter the garden? By sinking into the river Tigris that comes up at the tree of life. Excuse me. And of course, that's not from the Bible either. Readers who are not familiar with the Bible need to know this is not from the Bible, this is Milton. And he tries to stick kind of with the Bible, but we have very few words in the first few chapters of Genesis compared with all the words in Paradise Lost. So he has to make it all up. Which creature does Satan choose to possess or enter into? The serpent. You knew that without even reading. And our last question, define officious. Meddlesome. Something that is officious is meddlesome. And I do think we see that in Shakespeare if you read more Shakespeare. Okay, enjoy John Milton's Paradise Lost this week. You're nearing the end of reading Paradise Lost. Your paper is due session 21, probably 2 weeks from now. This is session 19. Beginning session 21, we're going to be reading John Milton's Pilgrim's Progress. So if you don't have your book yet, excuse me, make sure you have it. Do not get anything. Pilgrim's Progress, there are lots of children's versions out there or copies that are abridged. They're changed to make them easy. And there's no reason for you not to read the original. So do get the full thing, please. Pilgrim's Progress, and the Lord bless you. And I will see you, hiccup, I will see you next week. There we go.